Greetings and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, executive editor of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me today, as he does each and every week, is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent, Ben Yount. How are things, Ben?
We are ticking this summer away pretty soon, sweatshirt weather, and I can't wait. I finally got a sweatshirt from my alma mater 20 years after let's just say, decided to explore the opportunities of the Bill Clinton economy. My favorite euphemism for not graduating.
That's all right, Ben. You do great work as a professional radio host and journalist for the Center Square. Of course, September also means college football season. I'm sure you're excited about that.
Hey, you know what? The Big Ten now goes coast to coast, baby. That traditional Big Ten October rivalry in the snow, UCLA and Maryland.
That will be different, no doubt about it. Ben, we're recording this on a Wednesday, August 16th. This week, Governor Tony Evers vetoed a bill that would have required the state's Department of Professional Services to investigate a weeks-long backlog of issuing professional licenses to job creators. One, why did Evers veto the measure? And two, what's been the reaction, particularly among the business community?
You've got to go back to the heady days of the coronavirus to get an understanding as to just how broken the inner workings of state governments were here in Wisconsin. And the coronavirus presented unprecedented challenges for people who work for the state of Wisconsin. Two agencies came out of those busy days with giant, for Republicans, targets on their back. For the people who deal with the agencies, question marks hanging over their head. The first was the Department of Workforce Development, and we can talk as we've written story after story after story about DWD and just its inability to process the flood of people who were asking to get onto unemployment. You had unemployment spike to 14%. Thousands upon thousands of people called, and they just didn't pick up the phone. It is a similar story of just not picking up the phone over at the Department of Safety and Professional Services, DSPS, as they love to call it in Madison. And what you had is you had a weeks to months long backlog grow as people no longer worked in state government offices, as people worked remotely, as there was a flood of, we got to do this. And so people who need a professional license from the state, everybody from engineers to dental hygienists to your barber or your hairstylist, they need to regularly renew and get, as our friends over at Americans for Prosperity call it, a permission slip from the government to do their job. And even after the crunch of the coronavirus happened, DSPS never caught back up. When lawmakers started getting questions from the dentists and the barbers and the engineers and everybody else in their district who needed this license in order to work, the legislature started pressing DSPS leaders, what's going on? What can we do to help? Help me, help you. And the response they got was, well, give us more money. Then we could maybe hire some more people. But don't worry about it. We're managing this. We're dealing with this. And that was over a year ago. More hearings, more delays, more questions. Those questions largely went unanswered. And it was about the time, and we wrote about this, I'd like to say 8 months or so ago, of a hearing where the DSPS director essentially brushed off lawmakers. And I know you've spent enough time around state capitals, Dan. When someone with a state agency comes in and has a dismissive attitude to the upper chamber, that never goes over well. And so Republicans in the state decided, all right, well, if you're not going to fix this, we will fix it for you. And there was a handful of pieces of legislation that came from that frustration. One would order a study to see exactly who is waiting, how long are they waiting, and why are they waiting? There were other pieces of legislation that would require DSPS to take additional steps to try and speed this up. Does everybody need a professional license? Does everyone that you're having come through the system need to be there? Governor Evers vetoed this, as he has vetoed many other pieces of legislation that would reform the inner workings of state government, and the Institute for Reforming Government, which is a budget watchdog reform group in Madison, said plainly that this is another instance of the governor protecting the bureaucracy from lawmakers and ultimately from the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin.
Yeah, this bureaucracy that you mentioned of these licenses that governments across the country, this is not just a Wisconsin issue, this is an issue across the country. In fact, it's been fascinating to watch it as we cover these issues at the Center Square. Why do you need, for example, 100 hours of training to get a license to be a barber, as you mentioned, or a hairdresser, or a tattoo artist, or a cosmetologist? So they treat some of these professions as if they're like brain surgeons sometimes with what they make you go through to get these licenses. And then maybe you go through the training and you're still waiting on the state to issue the license because of this backlog. I'm sure it's frustrating.
I talked with my old barber in Illinois about this. And he said, look, you go to barber college, you take the cosmetology test, and some of it is dealing with infections and head wounds. If you accidentally cut somebody while giving them a haircut, you need to sort of have the basic first aid knowledge to just, to do something about it. But he said that he also had to take the test on dyeing hair and doing ethnic braids and all other things that he as a barber for men would never do. And in the time of Yelp and online reviews, it does not matter if you have a license. If you good cut hair, people will get the word out and they will come and they will let you cut their hair. But this is, as you said, frustrating. Scott Manley with Wisconsin's largest business group, Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce, told us over at the Center Square, he said it is infuriating to see so many Wisconsinites wait for license just so they can work. These plans would have given greater government transparency to allow the public to see how many occupational licenses are backlogged and the average wait time that it takes for the government to issue one of those. So the governor's veto was wrong, and it's just going to keep Wisconsinites in the dark about how his administration is operating. And that's really the split here. There's the free market conversation here of, do you really need a permission slip from the government to do some of these jobs? But this is also part of a pattern. Sorry to cut you off. Part of a pattern from the governor where he's reluctant to order any change, any reforms to the administration of his administration.
And of course, the sooner these people get to work, the sooner they're contributing to the local economy, the more tax dollars local and state governments can collect off of their income, off of sales taxes and things like that. Ben, we're almost out of time. One final question for you. Thoughts on whether the Republican-controlled legislature tries to override the veto?
They are 3 votes short in the assembly. If they had those 3 votes, they would override this governor on a weekly basis, but they are 3 votes short in the assembly. And unless and until a red wave sweeps across Wisconsin in November of 2024, they will remain 3 votes short of overriding this governor.
And even on an issue such as occupational licensing, which doesn't necessarily have to be a partisan issue, you don't see any Democrats switching over.
Even if this was free puppy dog kisses and ice cream cones, you would not be able to find any Democrats to defect from Governor Evers. This state is locked and loaded for years of political battles. Next time, perhaps we can talk about the Janet Protasewicz court and the multitude of battles that are coming from that will turn Republicans and Democrats against each other. Hatfields and McCoys ain't going to have nothing on the partisan split in the Wisconsin Capitol here in about 5 months.
Well, Ben, you can keep your free puppy dog kisses. I'll take the ice cream, though. But we are out of time. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com. For Ben Yount, I'm Dan McCaleb. Please subscribe. Thank you for listening.